Aktivistinnen und Journalistinnen in Iran natürlich auch in der Diaspora machen auf die aktuelle Situation in Iran aufmerksam. Gewalt gegen Frauen ist derzeit ein weltweites Problem für iranische Frauen. Herzlich willkommen zu Nyimas Bantaba. Mein Name ist Nyima. In unserer heutigen Sendung wollen wir über das Thema Gewalt gegen Frauen, Perspektive und die aktuelle Situation im Iran sprechen. Mit mir im Studio heute online auch sind zwei Journalistinnen. Mit mir im Studio ist Mahtab. Mahtab ist Journalistin, auch sehr engagiert bei Netzwerkmedien Vielfalt. Auch online via Zoom ist Fred. Fred, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
In Iran, more than 12 weeks now after the protests began in September, regime forces are actually using unprecedented violence against the protesters, especially in the Kurdish northwest of the country. The demonstrations were first ignited by the death of Mahsa Amini, a 22-year-old Kurdish Iranian woman who died in mid-September after being detained by the country's morality police. Since then, protests across Iran have coalesced around a range of grievances with the regime. Increasingly, activists and experts are characterizing the protests as a national uprising and one of the biggest challenges to the Iranian regime since its founding. You're watching the Nyimas Bantaba. My name is Nyima. Together with me, my guest is Mahtab. Thank you for coming all the way from North Rhine-Westphalia to join us in Berlin on our ALEX Berlin studios. You're welcome, Mahtab. Also, Fred is actually joining us all the way from Prague online. Thank you, Fred, for joining us. Like I said, we'll be looking at violence against women, perspectives, and of course, the current situation in Iran on our today's topic. This actually coincides with the 16 days activism under the International Day Against Violence Against Women, which actually would be celebrated until December 16. First of all, Fred, you are a journalist of Iranian background and has been very well active, of course, since the protests erupted. You have also written a few articles. Can you please share with us a bit of your knowledge? How did the protest started first? Of course, I've made mention of, in regards to the 22-year-old lady who was, forcefully beaten and at some point died. But you are the expert here. Tell us a bit about your knowledge. What have you learned so far? What happened?
Okay, first greetings from Brussels. I'm based in Brussels now.
Yeah.
And greetings to your audience too. Also, first thing I want to put here that I think is very important, that Iranian women's struggle for freedom started from the early days of revolution, when Islamic State, Islamic Republic imposed the compulsory hijab to Iranian women. And this struggle continues for 44 years now. And what happened is that when Mahsa Amini was arrested and died when she was in custody of so-called morality police, then it was probably the tipping point that protests started from Kurdistan, because she was from Sakbez in Kurdistan province, and it was widespread over the nation. I mean, when the slogan is woman freedom, woman life freedom, I mean, it goes beyond, women rights for freedom. Because Iranian population wants, freedom, justice, and if you look at the slogans, Mahtab can check it and give comments on it, they say, we don't want Islamic Republic. And it's the main point of this struggle, because at present, I think, even Iranian children understood all issues even go beyond human rights concerns and freedom of expression and so on, which is very valuable. Iranians sacrificed their lives for that, but it goes beyond that, because Islamic Republic mismanagement, repression, now the option is between death and life. If we continue with the Islamic Republic, the end is tragedy. And many people in the last 2-3 years who consider themselves that they are not involved with politics, and in Farsi would say, I am not man siyasi nistam, I am not a political person, they realize living in Iran and the Islamic Republic, everything is political, and you are concerned, and your life is concerned.
So we say the veil is politically motivated. Quite interesting. It means like politics and religion has been somehow mixed. Mahtab, being a woman coming from Iran, of course, now a very good journalist, how do you feel? Of course, this protest found you in Germany, not in Iran. But how do you feel when you realize that, okay, of course, I'm sure this debate has been going on for a while now, you know, Iran really trying to be Islamic and women has to wear veil. How do you feel when you are forced to wear a veil? Is this okay with you? Is this human right? Or what's your opinion on this?
First, hi. Hello to you and to Fred and to all people who listen to us. How does it feel to have to veil?
By force, not by choice.
Yeah, by force. Yeah. How does it feel to have to wear mandatory hijab in Iran? It feels humiliating. Okay. I'm trying not to ruin your interview by crying.
You're feeling emotional. We urge your discretion.
It feels humiliating. I think this is the point where many of the things that my generation experienced in hiding through having this double life, having this underground life in which we were ourselves, and then having this life at schools, at universities, where at work, which you have to not be yourself, but be someone who is wanted in those spaces, who is accepted. This duality is something that the new generation, and also many of other generations, I'm not saying that it's a question of generation, I'm just saying that it's a question of the patience, you know. People don't want to take it anymore, to think somehow, to believe somehow, and then to act something totally different, and have this, you know, have this on their conscience that this is a lie. This is a lie I'm living. I respect any woman who wears hijab out of her choice. It is her empowerment. It is her power that she displays in public the way she wants to. And for that, I stand in solidarity with any woman who is under pressure not to wear the hijab. And on the other hand, I expect all women who believe in freedom, in bodily freedom, in bodily autonomy for women, to stand in solidarity with women in Iran who are taking to the street and risking their lives to shout Jinjian Azadi, because this is, as Fred said, now it is about life. It is, yeah, human rights is nice, like having freedom of expression is nice, but now this is a point, like we have learned through these years of dictatorship, that if these things are taken from you, then you're left with a life that is not worth living. If the freedom of association is taken away from workers, then they are totally disempowered, and they come to a point when, you know, even if they want to protest, their protest will be political, and they have to join with everybody else to go to the street. Mm-hmm. So it's, I think it's a really important moment in our history.
Sorry that I made you feel emotional. That's not my intention, but that's
that's the life of an immigrant.
Yeah, but I mean, this is also, the topic is also emotional, and I believe the whole world is in solidarity with the Iranian women, and you mentioned a very important statement here, like, I mean, if you wear the hijab by choice, it's always amazing, but if you're forced to do it, it is something else, right?
And in Iran, there was this slogan a couple of weeks ago, "Che ba hijab, che bi hijab mirim be suye enqilab." Whether veiled or not, we go towards revolution. Wow. So there is already this solidarity. There are many women, Fatemeh Sepehri, even the nephew of the supreme leader Khamenei, they are women who are religious, they are veiled, but they were convicted to long-term imprisonments because of their resistance against the regime. So the question is really the question of choice, embodiment, bodily autonomy for anybody who is not privileged in this patriarchal society.
And I'll just quote from "With or Without Hijab, we're going on revolution." Apropos revolution, Fred, the protest actually, since it started, has coalitioned around a range of grievances with the regime. And I was just wondering, I mean, was it just because of this protest that people built a lot of grievance towards the regime, or was this existent before? Because I understand there is a lot of democratic questions and human rights, especially women and so on. I mean, how does the grievance escalated at just one point?
You know, for 44 years, if you look at the Iranian history, even if, I mean, it shows that there is a struggle for freedom and justice. Mm-hmm. And we have these arbitrary executions. Now, I should mention that today, this morning, another young protester was executed.
Well, sorry.
And I mean, international community should support and look at the options to stop this wave of killing in Iran. It's state killing and murdering, you know, it's literal. I mean, saying this, if you look at for 44 years, it started from the first days of Islamic Revolution. I mean, they started to, for example, execute first Baha'is or kill a Christian pastor, and then lefties or even people who so-called belong to Pahlavi regime, to consider belonging to Shah dynasty, and it continues. They killed the lefties, and there was no dialogue. There's only repression. And if we look at it, 2009, Green Movement, it was very, you know, silent, peaceful movement, just asking, you know, for their votes in controversial president election. Then there was repression, and it continues. And there are three things happens, I mean, together. First, people realize that Iranian state has no idea to reform itself. Mm-hmm. At one point, they appointed, I mean, Iranian presidential election is not election. They just appoint few people, 3 or 4 people from the same clan, and they choose who is going to become president. The last one is Ibrahim Raisi, who is death judge. He's considered as a judge, one of the judges who ordered the killing a few thousand political prisoners in 1988, that is considered one of the worst criminal stories of Iran. And then they appointed him as a president. Then there is, you know, huge corruption in the country. Every time within Iran, you read a newspaper, you see the billions of dollars, millions of dollars corrupted, and nobody, you know, stolen, and nobody is charged. And all is linked with regime. And at the same time, they continued the repression. They didn't sign the nuclear deal. Iran become more and more isolated. And who is bearing this economic woes is Iranian people. Because you look at on one side, the children of Iranian authorities are in US, Canada, and Europe. There are films, tons of photos about the luxury lives, and then they chant death to America, and they put all this burden on Iranians. And then they started not only to repress political prisoners or civil rights movement, and they started to do some kind of so-called tragic crimes, such as hitting the Ukrainian airplane about 2-3 years ago, when 150 or 160 people, most of them Iranian Canadian, were killed. Then they started to repress more and more women by the morality police. And as Mahtab said, this generation doesn't really want, I mean, all generations didn't want, but this generation more than other don't want to be deprived of its freedom. It's a generation which grew up with internet, is very globalized, and they have very, clear ideas what they want. And they want life. They want life, they want freedom, and they want justice. It's why it was the tipping point. If it didn't happen to Mahsa, it would, again, there would be another incident that people express their anger and this revolution would be gone.
People want life, people want justice. This is one of the reasons why the protest is on, why the revolution is still on. You're watching the Nyimas Bantaba. We are talking about violence against women with a perspective and, of course, the actual focus on Iran. Wir sind live auf Nyimas Bantaba. Wir sprechen über das Thema Gewalt gegen Frauen, Perspektiven und aktuelle Situation auf Iran und Mahtab. Wir haben auch über, also gerade Gewalt gegen Frauen ist derzeit ein weltweites Problem für iranische Frauen. Als Journalistin, was ist eigentlich deine Rolle? Also zum Beispiel, wie bekommst du Informationen aus dem Iran? Also wie informierst du dich?
Gerade jetzt vor allem ist Social Media. Deswegen sagen wir überall, eine Forderung, eine ganz wichtige Forderung von uns ist Internetzugang. Das wäre unmöglich für uns überhaupt aktiv zu sein, überhaupt diese Wissen zu haben hier, ohne Instagram, ohne WhatsApp. So jetzt 2009 war Facebook, YouTube, Twitter filtert im Iran und jetzt sind alle an Telegram. Dann kommt Telegram und dann jetzt sind alle Instagram, WhatsApp, alle Social Medien, was hier wir als Default haben, ist im Iran verboten. Und ich weiß, dass jede Aktivistinnen im Iran, die etwas zu uns postet, hat lange Zeit gebraucht, irgendwie so diese VPN, Antifilter, dies und das einmal versuchen, ob eine davon funktioniert und dass ein Foto oder diese Nachrichten zu uns schicken. Deswegen bitten wir alle auf so International Community, dass wenn ein Film, ein Video aus dem Iran kommt, man muss wissen, dass der Person, die das gepostet hat, einmal riskiert hat, diese Fotos zu nehmen, diese Video auf der Straße, von der Straße mit nach Hause zu bringen und dann posten. Und das riskiert viel. Und deswegen bitte nimm diese Zeit und schau mal, was auf der Straße passiert, was für Frauen passiert, was großartige Widerstand sie leisten da. So jetzt unser erster Kanal ist Social Media.
Yeah. Vielen Dank, Mahtab. Actually, Fred, I'm sorry you're a bit lost, unless you speak German. Because
no, but I can get that. Where you get your information, social media.
Super, fantastic, of course. Yeah, so actually, because Nyimas Bantaba is bilingual, so we do it both German and English, so that our German viewers as well would know what we are talking about. So this is what, but already you get it, what Mahtab was saying. How did she, as a journalist, get information about things happening in Iran? And she mentioned of social media media being a very powerful tool in terms of disseminating information, but as well to be careful.
Was nur ganz kurz. Wir wissen alle, dass diese Bewegung hat irgendwie angefangen mit Gina Mahsa Aminis Beerdigung in Sakis, aber der Nacht, in der sie in diesem Krankenhaus in Teheran gestorben war. Ich hatte Videos gesehen, live on Instagram. Sorry. Und in diesem Video, ich konnte die Sound von meinen Freundinnen erkennen.
Wow.
Und das ist ein ganz wichtiger Moment. Ich glaube, dass Frauenaktivistinnen da waren, Muttern mit ihren Tochtern da waren, weil ihre Tod war so, als Fred gesagt hat, es war so normal, wenn nicht Mahsa, dann ich. Denn jemand anders war in dieser Situation. Weil diese Situation, dieses Gewalt passiert die ganze Zeit zu Frauen. Und bei diesem besonders Fall, sie war so, ich will nicht, dass so abstimmen, dass jemand so und so ansehen muss. Aber sie hat diese ganz normale schwarze Kleidung und Schal.
Bukra. Is it Bukra?
It's not Bukra, it's like a scarf.
So. Mhm.
Wie ein Schal und dann ein ganz langer Mantel. Und das ist so normal, weißt du? So, das war so schockierend für alle diese Frauenaktivistinnen und sie waren direkt zum Krankenhaus und da war auch beschossen und Tiergas und Gewalt. Und, ja.
Tut mir echt leid, dass ihr wirklich in solche Situationen erfahren müsst, aber ich glaube, was ist Gutes, ist die Solidarität, die wirklich gerade passiert, die Widerstand von Frauen, wie sie wirklich kämpfen, das ist sehr, sehr toll. So, Fred, actually, since the protests started, increasingly activists and experts are characterizing the protest, as a national uprising or one of the biggest challenges the regime has ever faced. I mean, there has been protests going on before this due to human rights and dictatorial rule or whatever. How do you see this? Do you see this as this has been the most uprising protest, and is this the most challenging moment for the regime? What's your take on that?
And not only me, I think most of people who are observing Iran and Iranians, even the authorities in the Islamic Republic believe that and even it's good we call that something like national movement for freedom or revolution rather than even uprising. First, because it is the kind of a mix of 3 or 4 previous protest movements, like Green Movement or 2 others that happened in 3-4 past years. It is widespread, first of all. Second, it is many people from artistic background, artists, sport people, and writers and so on within countries supported this movement and Iranian people. Then there is very clear slogans that we don't want Islamic Republic. People really get upset. They don't see any kind of reforms, as I said previously, and they want to have a new one, and they cannot trust the Iranian state because why they are supposed to trust the state that killed them for 44 years, and which is so much corrupted. And another thing is that Iranian state has lost its popular base. if you see these protesters in many cities, even so-called religious cities, even in Qom, Mashhad, or in downtown, and so you see they lost a lot of their base. Even people within regime, and now some clerics started to criticize the state because they see they don't have any option to do that, to face Iranian people. It's on one side, and on the other side, I just listened to one of Iranian former academics who was fired from university. He said now Islamic Republic is facing this, he called it uprising of Iranian people, and other side he's facing, sanctions, and part of the sanctions and Western countries anger and upset with Iran because they took side with Russians in the war in Ukraine. And another sign of their weakness is that Iranian supreme leader and other authorities really talk about alliance and solidarity with China and Russia, and call it, turning to the so-called to the east. And we see that Chinese authorities took Arab countryside recently, and even in a statement they condemned Iranian state intervention and so on. I mean, they are at the very weak point. And plus, in addition, I should mention, for the first time, we see widespread strikes and at different, cities, and everything is against them. They don't have no option. They just seek to repress people, and people are so brave. And one of the mothers of this fallen protesters said, you are afraid, you are scaring us from what? From death? You made us our lives so hellish that we wish to die to get rid of this life. You cannot scare us anymore.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Mahtab, warum ist dieses Protest oder Demonstration so speziell? Ja, wie gesagt, es geht um eine Frau, die getötet war oder gestorben. Aber ich habe mich gefragt, okay, warum ist das so wichtig? Warum ist das so special? Warum kriegt dieses Protest so viele Solidarität? Warum dieses Protest oder Uprising ist eine der schwierigen Zeit für die iranische Regierung?
Ich glaube, genau weil sie das nicht erwartet hatten, dass es von Frauen kommt. Dass, ich glaube, niemand hat darauf gewartet. Und das ist für mich war so ein Surprise, dass Männer, die von diesem System privilegiert sind, auf der Straße Genjian Azadi aufrufen, dass ja zum ersten Mal diese Ebene von unserer Gesellschaft, die von meistens Strukturen diskriminiert wird, gesehen wird, gehört wird. Ja, Gewalt gegen Frauen war immer da, von Männern in der Familien, auf der Straße, von Staat, mit dieser Morality Police. Ich würde nur Hijab Police sagen, weil keine Moralität hier integriert ist. Und Frauen hatten alle diese Jahre, von 44 Jahren Widerstand geleistet hatten. Und auf täglicher Basis. So jeden Tag, sie haben davor gekämpft, dass von dieser so ein Hijab, dann bekommen wir ein bisschen mehr und mehr. Und dann ist so sie sagen so loose Hijab im Iran. So das ist eine Freiheit irgendwie, dass sie gewonnen haben mit diesem, als dieser Soziologe Asif Bayat das genannt hat, Non-Movement, dass die so Schritt per Schritt, so ganz kurze Schritte, aber sie haben was gewonnen von dem Staat. Ja. Und davor, sie hatten diese Selbstbewusstheit bekommen, dass ja, aber das haben wir geleistet bisher, aber das ist genug, jetzt ist genug, genug ist genug. Wir können nicht einfach noch eine andere Opfer haben, nur weil ein Staat will abstimmen, wie wir uns anziehen wollen. Und natürlich, es geht nicht nur um Dresscode, sondern um so Reproduction Rights, so wie heißt das auf Englisch, auf Deutsch? Reproduction Rights?
Recht auf Reproduktion.
Ja. So,
wir sind alle keine erste Muttersprachler.
Sind Migrantinnen.
So it's okay. Anyway.
Und ja, es geht um Bodily Autonomy. Es geht um Selbstbestimmung. Ja, und dann von dieser besonders Welle von Protesten sind ganz wichtig, weil sie diese Intersektion von alle diese Oppressions, Diskriminierungen so repräsentiert. Jina Mahsa Amini war eine Kurdin im Teheran. Und dann hat die Bewegung von Saqqez, ihre Heimatstadt, auch im Kurdistan angefangen. Und da hat diese Intersektion von Ethnizität / Nationalität und Gender sich repräsentiert und dann hat die ganze Land damit identifiziert. Und jetzt sehen wir, dass das ist eine Revolution für mich, weil wir über Sachen sprechen, dass wir niemals vorher sprechen hatten. Jetzt wissen wir, dass Hinrichtungen in Kurdistan und in Baluchistan für das Regime so einfach ist. Und das ist, was wir Menschen in der Hauptstädte, die irgendwie besser profitieren, sind, niemals gedacht hatten. Jetzt wissen wir, dass Menschen in Baluchistan keine Identifizierung haben, keine ID-Card haben.
Wow.
Und das ist so einfach. Und dann jetzt fragen wir, ja, warum sind nicht Baluch-Frauen auf der Straße? Die sind nicht da, because wir haben nicht geguckt. Sie waren immer da, sie waren aktiv, aber diese Intersection von alle diese Diskriminierungen, von Ethnizität, von Religion, in Baluchistan, in Kurdistan sind meistens Mehrheit Sunnis. Dass sie als gewaltig und bewaffnet repräsentiert wurden vom Staat. Und dann alle diese Images haben sich gelöscht in diesen 87 Tagen. Ja.
Oh, interessant. Vielen Dank. Like Mahtab said, enttäuscht. It's surprising, like I asked, because according to reports, this protest has been the most challenging time for the regime. It has never happened. Why? Because he said, because it's women that took onto the street, right? I think women were under powered because they're just women, they should just stay home. So maybe they never thought that women would take such a bold step to be on the street to demand for justice, to demand for their rights. And I think what Iranian women are doing, what you guys have started, is really, really outstanding. And I believe something will be achieved. And we are all in solidarity with you. Fred, being a journalist, a vocal person, a voice, writing, of course, on many things, on human rights issues, and of course, on the current situation. I was wondering, I've asked Mahtab this question, like, how is your connection? Like, how do you get information from Iran, being a diasporan, to publish, to inform the Iranian diaspora about ongoing situations, especially current situations in Iran? Of course, as journalists, we know how we get our sources, but how are you connecting?
You know, there one thing to mention that is very interesting about the internet. Why social networking and social media is important, it's not really vital for the revolution. I mean, recently, even people within country confess that even when we, block the internet at some time, still, the uprising and the protest goes on. I think people really went behind this timeline. I think it's just like 1848, Velvet Revolution, or revolution in Portugal, Greece, or Spain. There was no revolution, but no internet, but revolution happened. And many Iranians repeat that even you block internet, remember in 79, there was no internet, but revolution happened. But back to your question, I mean, one of these things, as I think Mahtab mentioned too, is social media, but we always should be very, very, very careful, because even for social media, you should really check your sources, because they are Islamic, not only Islamic republics, cyber activists or cyber army try to disinform sometimes, and sometimes people do it, for other reasons, to push a case or so on. One other thing is to have connection with people within country, or with people who have very good connection. For example, if you want to cover about Baloch people, I mean, when you have good connection here, that you really trust them, they are involved with these organizations, and you can really rely on them. I mean, having this kind of small group, niche groups connection is very important. I tell you stories. It happens here in Brussels. There was demonstrations a few months ago. Some people with different flags in the name of solidarity with Baloch people. I mean, at the first glance, it's great. Many media outlets reported that, Iranian ones. Then I just have some kind of suspicions. I checked with my Baloch friend who is involved with a Baloch organization for many years, and he's a very reliable source. He told me, Fred, you know what? I even didn't recognize one flag there. I mean, it shows that we always need to have good connection, contacts to check kind of information.
Es sieht auch so, dass wir wirklich eine gute Vernetzung oder gute Kontakte haben, um uns als Journalistinnen sich zu vernetzen können. Mahtab, also ich habe ein paar Artikel gelesen, dann habe ich diese herausgefunden, dass zum Beispiel so Kopftuch in Iran ist Politik so oppressiv und auch so ein bisschen Diktatur. Und dann habe ich mich gefragt, okay, was heißt das? Also das bedeutet, dass die Frauen, egal ob sie das wollen oder nicht, sie müssen Kopftuch tragen. Dieses Statement, was ist deine Verständnis über dieses Statement, dass Kopftuch in Iran ist politisch oppressiv und Diktatur?
Ja, weil du nicht aus deiner Wahl das trägst. Ja. So, beim 7 Jahren alt, wenn du in der Schule gehst, du musst ein Kopftuch antragen.
Ist das in die Verfassung? Oder das kommt irgendwie von welche?
Ich glaube nicht, dass es Verfassung ist.
Wow.
We can ask Fred as well. Is it in the Constitution?
She just mentioned that, like in Iran, at girls, if you are 7 years old, you have to wear a veil. So I asked, is that part of the Constitution, or is just this a decision that comes from anywhere from the government?
It's not in the Constitution.
It's not in constitutions, but you have other, law codes, like Islamic codes and law codes and so on.
Yeah, interesting.
قانون مجازات اسلامی, Islamic punishment code, and you find them there.
Wow.
Yeah, it's not necessarily in the Constitution.
So it's more of like Sharia law.
I just sorry to interrupt you, because maybe it's funny, but if now Iranian constitution has very, ups and downs, everybody knows. But even now, if you read Iranian constitution, you can go to jail, because they mentioned that torture is banned.
Wow.
But freedom of association is good. Mm-hmm. Education is free, and nothing happens. It becomes a bitter joke.
Mm-hmm. Ja,
es geht nicht
nicht in die Verfassung. Ja, ich glaube, das passiert. Also that happens a lot in so many countries, that what is in the constitution would not be practiced. They would either bring Sharia laws or man-made laws or laws that they think best shoot them. And I think this is oppressive. Sorry, Mahtab, wir haben dich kurz untergebrochen. Möchtest du weitermachen?
Ja, so also von Anfang, und deswegen ist jetzt diese Revolution auch in der Schule, beim Kinder. Man sieht Videos von Kindern, die in der Schule sein so Scarf ausnehmen und diese Parole auch das zu der Diktator aufrufen. Kleine Kinder in der Schule. Wow. Weil sie wissen, das ist so für Kinder überall.
Es geht um ihre Zukunft auch.
Ja.
Das ist eine gute Entscheidung, dass die Kinder auch etwas aufrufen, dass das so und so geht nicht. Also ich finde diese Idee sehr gut.
Ja, und dann sind die Studentinnen in der Schule sehr aktiv in dieser Revolution. Und viele von den Verhafteten sind auch so minderjährigen Studentinnen aus der Schule. Aber so bei uns im Iran, diese mandatory Hijab ist überhaupt nicht über Islam oder was man glaubt. Es gibt Police auf der Straße, so dass Frauen das ansehen. Und jetzt höre ich immer wieder von meinen Freundinnen, dass jeden Tag gibt es mehrere Frauen, die keinen Hijab antragen, obwohl sie wissen, und das hatte ich von meinen Journalistinnen-Freunden gehört haben, dass ich trage kein Kopftuch mehr, obwohl ich weiß, dass ich riskiere, was wie ein Acidattack.
Wow.
Was schon im Isfahan vor ein paar Jahren gehabt, das Acidattacks auf der Straße von Frauen. Einige Frauen haben seine Augen verloren. Und das war ein paar Wochen oder eine Woche nach der Imam von Isfahan hat gesagt, ja, wir müssen dafür bekämpfen, dass Frauen ja ganz gut diese Kopftuch tragen.
Schade. Das ist eigentlich sehr traurig, dass die von so Acidattack bekommen und so weiter. Das ist wirklich schade. Fred, So obviously, this is an uprising that the whole world is really watching. I mean, the media is really following and talking about it. And I was wondering, what's your take on about the role of the mainstream media? Of course, when such things happen, every journalist or media platform or media houses would have their own way of reporting. Either is it balanced or not? Are they in for what is happening or not? Some might be Islamophobic or anti-Semitic. Like, what has been your take on the role of the mainstream media in reporting the situation of Iran since the onset of the uprising?
Honest with you, on the Western side, it always depends on trust. I mean, I'm honest with you. For example, a few years ago, they were, killed this Abba 1908, that's how we call it in Iran, it's just 3 years ago. They call it killed 1,500 or something like that in 3 days, and based on rates. But really didn't cover that. And before that, 2 years ago, there was, in Iranian calendar, 96, there was a lot of repression in country, but I've seen some kind of, it really depends. For example, when Iranian former foreign minister Zarif, which was a darling of, some Western media, coming to US and even talking in a think tank saying that nobody goes to jail for his ideas, we don't have any prisoner of conscience, or Baha'is has the religious minorities that's under pressure, like Christian Converts and so on, but they have no problem. Nobody really challenged them. But now it's different. First, it's because of Iranian women and men bravery, and this movement continue, and Iranian outside of country really support them. And then on the other side, Iran is considered as enemy too to the West because of its nuclear, they didn't sign nuclear deal, and now they're on the side of Russia. Then they put, it's a good thing for Iranian population, they put on the same side that Iranian brave people that defied the regime. I mean, we need to give, voices to Iranians within Iran. I mean, they need to try to bring these people in, their voices in, to have an image of what's going on in the country. They really shouldn't, create a revolution or a protest movement according to its own imaginary for their own audience. I mean, I give you an example. There is no doubt about bravery of Iranian women. I mean, everybody's proud of them, and I said at the beginning of your show, it started 44 years ago. Before anybody else, Iranian women came to the streets for their rights, and it continued. And it's not only about hijab, they were faced a kind of triple violence in country. There is physical violence. I think Mahtab mentioned that about acid attacks and so on. They were beaten up if they don't, wear so-called hijab or veil that Iranian state wants. It is other side, it's structural violence. I mean, structural violence, there are a lot of laws against women. They dehumanize women, regarding jobs, regarding heritage, regarding everything, even for,
child custody.
Sorry?
Child custody.
Yeah. And even cultural violence. You look at Iranian films, always they're degrading women. Yeah, there is a man who is, who needs, to be the protector and so on, or the religious discourse that why a man can have 4 women and women, that is kind of dehumanizing women. Saying this, I want to argue like American, African women argue when there was a feminist movement. It's not a feminist movement for me. The revolution is not a feminist movement. It's beyond feminist movement. I mean, why is that? As African American women said at that time, they said even white women get the same right that white men. We are deprived of rights because of our color of skin. And they didn't talk about womanism and so on, which is completely right. As Iranian women got the same right that Iranian men, it's little bit better. as we can call it, that Baha'is or Christian converts got the same right that, I don't know, Sunnis or Zoroastrians or Armenians and so on that are recognized minorities. But it's not all, because Iranians, all of them are deprived of their rights as human beings. And it's why Iranian women and men want to create a society where everybody is equal there. And they want freedom for everybody. And when you look at the slogans in the country, it's wonderful. They support that, and there is no discussion of that. It is very, very revolutionary.
It is very revolutionary. Thank you very much. And you also made mention, like, it's not just a feminist movement, it's more than that. And on that note, I would shift my attention to Mahtab on a bit of feminism. Wie war Aktivismus vorher bei iranische Frauen und heute? Ich meine, was ist der Unterschied? Also ich meine, jetzt mehr Solidarität und dieses Internetpräsenz. Vielleicht hast du was dazu zu sagen?
Ich würde sagen, dass es, als Fred gesagt hat, war, dass die iranischen Frauen waren die erste Gruppe, die gegen diese Mandatory Hijab Widerstand geleistet hatten. Die hatten am 8. März 1979, so einen Monat nach der Revolution, so 44 Jahre, sie hatten einen ganz großen Protest in Teheran gemacht und leider hatten keine andere oder weniger andere politische Gruppe sie unterstützt hatten. Und danach gab es ja noch andere Versuche. Es gab eine ganz große Campaign, 1 Million Signature Campaign, war ein Versuch für Veränderung von dieser Laws, die
verloren?
Law?
Ach, Regeln.
Regeln, die gegen Frauen waren, zum Beispiel, dass sie nicht dass eine Frau nicht wie ihre Brüder zum Beispiel inherit.
We continue. Inheritance.
They could not inherit the same. So, das war ein Versuch, um diese Regeln zu ändern. Was danach kommt, war, dass viele Aktivistinnen in diesem Campaign auch verhaftet wurden. Dann die Frauen haben noch versucht, deswegen wir sind an diesem Point, weil alle Wege, die etwas friedlich und war ja diese Regeländerung oder Partizipation im Parlament möglich war. Die Frauen haben es versucht. Zum Beispiel, es gab eine Campaign für Frauen zu 30% von Parlamentariern zu kriegen, diese Quote. Das war auch nicht erfolgreich.
Yeah. So we are approaching the end of the talk show. Fred, maybe my final question to you, like, what is the current situation in Iran? Like, what's happening there?
I mean, you never can predict the outcome of movement like this. But one thing is clear: people has the will to change. They are ready to sacrifice their lives, and as Martin Luther King said, when you don't have something to die for, your life is really worthless to live. It's not word by word, it's like that. Iranians now have an option to change. I mean, and even at now, imagine now everything become quiet. I'm sure about, a couple of weeks later, it will restart, because the state has no plan to do something good for its own people. I mean, and they have no control on corruption, because it's wrong to say that there is mafia within Islamic Republic. The Islamic Republic became mafia itself.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a struggle, and Iranian people have no option rather to overcome the regime.
Wow. You're watching the Nyimas Bantaba. Today we are talking about violence against women with a clear focus on the perspective of Iraq. I mean, situation that happened in Iran, actually. This edition is actually in collaboration with Get the Trolls Out. Get the Trolls Out is a project or a campaign launched to combat discrimination and intolerance based on religious grounds in Europe. The project is actually led by the Media Diversity Institute with all the 7 partners across Europe. The campaign actually aimed to harness the power of social media to disseminate innovative media outputs and generate dialogue in order to deliver a powerful counter-narrative against diverse forms of hate speech, including anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, anti-Christian sentiment. Finally, Mahtab, letzte Frage. Was braucht ihr als iranische Frau? Was könnten für das Welt für euch tun? So in 1 Minute zusammenfassen.
I will have to say this in English.
Sure.
Be our voice, look at us, don't look away. A great thing is happening. I would say already a great thing has happened. It is really difficult to, as Fred said, guess what is happening afterwards, but tomorrow has started in September 2020 for us. The people in Iran know what they want. They want freedom, and they are not going back. If you have any Iranian friend, you most probably have heard this already, that we cannot go back.
We cannot go back, and the world isn't letting you behind. We are taking you along. We are in solidarity with you. That's all we have for you on today's edition of the Nyimas Bantaba. My name is Nyima. We've been talking about violence against women in the context of the 16 days activism on International Day of Violence Against Women, and we've been looking at the concrete focus on the situation of Iran and the forced violence of women to wear veil in Iran. Das war's von unserer heutigen Sendung. Wir haben über das Thema Gewalt gegen Frauen, Perspektive, die aktuelle Lage im Iran gesprochen. Bantaba ist ein traditioneller Treffpunkt, wo Leute zusammensetzen, wie heute und sich unterhalten über verschiedene Themen. Der Name leitet sich von einem großen Baum ab. Der Begriff stammt aus Mandinka, das ist meine Muttersprache, werde meistens in Gambia und Senegal ausgesprochen. Auf das Bantaba-Bühne beschäftigen wir mit verschiedenen Themen und diskutieren mit Leuten von diversen kulturellen Hintergründen mit dem Fokus auf Migration, Frauen, Empowerment und Kultur. Das ist, was wir von unserer heutigen Sendung für euch gehabt haben. Folgt uns auf Social Media oder schickt uns ein Mail. Es ist ein schönen guten Tag von mir. Bis zum nächsten Mal. Ciao.